You'll be shocked to learn the truth about Jesus' face and skin color. Was Jesus really how we've always pictured him? A letter written by Pontius Pilate to the Roman Emperor Tiberius reveals surprising details about Jesus, details not even mentioned in the Gospels. Pilate describes Jesus' looks, his miracles, his trial, crucifixion, and even his resurrection. So what exactly did Pilate say? Pilate starts his letter by greeting the emperor and explaining that strange events in Judea forced him to write. He says it feels like the gods have turned against Rome since he took charge there. When he first arrived in Jerusalem, he threw a big banquet for the local leaders, but none of them showed up. He took this as disrespect. Later, the high priest visited him and claimed he couldn't eat with Romans because of his religion, but Pilate could tell he was lying and saw that the Jewish leaders secretly hated the Roman government. Pilate warns that the priests were dangerous and willing to betray anyone for power. He says the people of Jerusalem are hard to control and often rebel. He didn't have enough soldiers and feared a major uprising. Then Pilate talks about Jesus. He heard rumors about a man in Galilee preaching a new message. At first, he thought Jesus might be stirring up trouble. But when he saw him in person, speaking calmly to a large crowd, Pilate realized Jesus was different. He sent his secretary, who spoke Hebrew, to listen closely. The secretary returned amazed, saying he had never heard such wisdom, not even from famous philosophers. When someone asked Jesus if it was right to pay taxes to Caesar, Jesus said, "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." This impressed Pilate. He said Jesus wasn't a rebel, so he let him go. He even offered Jesus protection, though Jesus probably didn't know it. Jesus was free to speak, teach, and gather followers, and Pilate respected that. If someday, may the gods forbid, the religion of our ancestors is replaced by Jesus' teachings, it will be because of this tolerance. That may be the fall of Rome, and I would have played a part in what Jews call providence and we call fate. The freedom I gave Jesus made many rich and powerful Jews angry. Jesus often spoke harshly to them. That, to me, was reason enough to protect him. He called the scribes and Pharisees snakes, saying they looked clean outside like fancy tombs, but were full of death inside. He also challenged traditions, teaching that humility mattered more to God than social status. Almost every day, people came to the praetorium to complain about Jesus. They warned he might be harmed, since Jerusalem had a history of stoning prophets. A petition was being sent to Caesar, but the Senate backed me and promised reinforcements after the Persian War. Still, I didn't have enough troops to stop an uprising. So I chose to act. I invited Jesus to the praetorium to talk. When he arrived, I stood on the balcony. Though I'm Roman and Spanish and not easily shaken, my body trembled. He stood calm, pure, and peaceful. With a simple gesture, he seemed to say, "I'm here," without speaking. I was deeply impressed. He looked like no hero or god our artists have ever painted. There was nothing unpleasant about him, but I felt weak, too old to step forward. Finally, I spoke. "Jesus of Nazareth, for 3 years I've let you speak freely, and I don't regret it. Your words are wise. I don't know if you've read Socrates or Plato, but your teachings seem even greater. The emperor knows about you, and I'm proud to have given you this freedom. But be warned, your words have made strong enemies. Socrates had enemies too, and they killed him. Your enemies are even angrier. Some accuse me of helping you weaken the little power Rome gives the Hebrews. This is advice, not an order. Be careful. Speak more carefully. Don't let your pride give your enemies a chance to stir up the crowds and force me to act." Jesus calmly replied, "Ruler of the earth, your words are not true wisdom. Ask Mount Tabor to stop moving, and it will say it follows the laws of nature and God. Only God knows where the waters flow. I tell you, before the rose of Sharon blooms, the blood of the righteous will be spilled." I answered, deeply moved, "Your wisdom means more to me than these rebellious Pharisees, who abuse the freedom Rome gave them. They plot against Caesar and lie about him, calling him a tyrant. They don't see that sometimes a wolf wears sheep's clothing to fool the people. They have evil plans, but I'll protect you, I said. My praetorium will be your safe place, day and night. Jesus, calm and peaceful, shook his head and smiled. When the time comes, the Son of Man will have no refuge, on earth or below. True refuge is in heaven, he said, pointing upward. What the prophets wrote will come true. Worried, I replied, you're forcing me to make this an order. I'm responsible for this province's safety. Please be more careful with your words. You know the consequences. May happiness be with you. Farewell. Prince of the earth, Jesus answered, I didn't come to bring trouble, but peace, love, and kindness. I was born the same day Augustus brought peace to Rome. The persecutions aren't truly because of me, but I know I'll face them, obeying my Father's will. You can't stop what's meant to happen. Then he left, like light fading on the horizon, and honestly, I felt relieved. His presence was too heavy. Herod, who was old and ruled at the time, also joined Jesus' enemies out of revenge. He would have killed Jesus right away if not for his fear of losing favor with the Senate. Maybe like me, he feared Jesus too, but a Roman can't admit fear of a Jew. Herod visited me, and before leaving, asked what I thought of Jesus. I said, he seems like a wise man. He doesn't talk politics, so Rome lets him speak. He's done nothing worth punishment. Herod gave a sarcastic smile and left. Passover was coming, and tensions were rising in the city. Crowds were stirred up. My spies told me the temple leaders had bribed them using sacred funds. A Roman soldier had been publicly shamed. I asked the Syrian governor for 100 soldiers and 100 horsemen, but he refused. I was left with few men in a city ready to revolt, and I had no choice but to let things play out. Jesus was arrested for rebellion, though we all knew he wasn't dangerous. Still, with support from their leaders, the crowd kept yelling, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" 3 groups came together against him: the Herodians, Sadducees, and Pharisees. Their hate had many reasons: religious, political, and personal. The Herodians and Sadducees hated Jesus, but also disliked Roman rule. They never forgave me for bringing emperor banners into the holy city. That offense, to them, could never be undone. I had also once suggested using some temple funds for public projects. The Pharisees, already against Jesus, were outraged. They didn't care much for politics, but they held deep grudges. For the past 3 years, Jesus had been criticizing religious leaders everywhere he went. Besides dealing with them, I also had to handle a wild and rebellious crowd, always ready to start trouble. When Jesus was brought before the high priest, Caiaphas, he quickly sentenced him to death and sent him to me, acting like he respected my authority. Since Jesus was from Galilee, I sent him to Herod. But Herod, pretending to honor Rome, sent him back, putting all the pressure on me. Soon, my palace felt like a fortress under siege. Huge crowds flooded Jerusalem, many from Nazareth. One man fell at my feet crying, saying he had a vision. Jesus walked on water, flew with the wind, calmed storms, and even fish obeyed him. He warned me, "Don't harm this man, he's sacred. Your wife's dream is a warning. If you ignore it, disaster will come." The crowd dragged Jesus back to me. I stood before them and asked what they wanted. They all shouted, "Crucify him." I asked what crime he committed. They said he called himself the Son of God and claimed he'd destroy the temple. But under Roman law, none of this deserved death. Still, the angry mob yelled louder, "Crucify him." Jesus stayed calm through it all. Hoping to save him, I followed tradition and offered to release a prisoner for the holiday. I chose Jesus. But the crowd demanded his death. I reminded them of their own laws. A judge had to fast before sentencing. The Sanhedrin had to approve. A man on horseback had to ride and announce the charges. The accused could speak in his defense 3 times. But they didn't care. As a last resort, I had Jesus whipped, thinking it would satisfy them. It didn't. Their hate only grew. I washed my hands in front of them and said, "This man is innocent." But it didn't matter. They wanted him dead. I've seen riots before, but nothing like this. The whole city shook with rage, like hell itself had risen. The crowd moved like a wild storm, shouting all the way from the palace to Mount Zion. The sky darkened like a winter day. For 3 years, Jesus had been speaking out against the religious leaders everywhere he went. Along with these groups, I also had to deal with a restless crowd always ready for chaos or rebellion. When Jesus was brought before the high priest, they sentenced him to death. Caiaphas, the high priest, sent him to me, pretending to respect Roman law, hoping I'd approve the sentence. I said since Jesus was from Galilee, he should be judged by Herod. But Herod sent him back, putting the responsibility on me. Soon, my palace was surrounded. Crowds came from all over Judea, especially from Nazareth. A man claiming to see visions begged me not to harm Jesus, saying he was sacred and had power over nature. My wife also warned me in a dream not to hurt him. As the crowd brought Jesus back, I asked what crime he had committed. They shouted, "Crucify him," and accused him of blasphemy and calling himself the Son of God. I reminded them that under Jewish law, a death sentence required careful steps: fasting, Sanhedrin approval, public announcements, and time for new evidence. But the crowd didn't care, they just kept shouting. Trying to save him, I offered to release Jesus, as was custom during the festival. But they chose Barabbas instead and demanded Jesus be crucified. I had him whipped, hoping it would calm them, but it only made them angrier. Finally, I washed my hands before them and said I found no guilt in Jesus, but it didn't matter. Their minds were made up. That day, I saw a rage unlike anything before. The crowd was wild, louder than any riot I'd seen in Rome or elsewhere. Darkness fell over the city as Jesus was led away. I asked him if his dizziness was from standing up too fast. He said no, he hadn't slept all night because sleeping during duty could mean death. He had let some soldiers rest, and a few were still sleeping. I asked how long the event lasted. He guessed about an hour, until daylight took over. When I asked if he went to the tomb afterward, he said no, he was scared. Once reinforcements came, they all went back to the barracks. He said the priests questioned him. They told him to say there was an earthquake and the guards were asleep. They offered him money to say Jesus' followers stole the body. But he didn't see any disciples and only heard about the missing body later. When I asked what the priests thought, he said some believed Jesus wasn't just a man. They thought he had appeared before, like in the time of Abraham and Lot. This matched what people said about him: turning water into wine, healing the sick, calming storms, raising the dead, and more. Even Jesus' enemies admitted he was different. He wasn't accused of normal crimes. Thousands saw his miracles. Some believed, like the man at the cross said, truly this was the Son of God. Pontius Pilate said Jesus stood out. He was average height, calm, and peaceful. His face showed kindness and deep understanding. His hair was long, soft, and light brown. His eyes were deep and kind, sometimes described as brown or blue. His skin was fair and smooth. He had a well-kept beard and dressed simply, always clean and modest. Jesus looked humble but had a powerful presence. Even in silence, he brought peace. Dear Sovereign, I've told you everything honestly so you can judge me fairly. I remain your loyal servant. Backhand index pointing right if you like this video. Subscribe now and click on the next one to uncover more amazing mysteries.